channel, make sure it's going. Volume should be completely down, going completely. Testing. Can you hear anything? Can't. Let's see. Let us do.
Oh, now I lost your music. Oh, you got the mute. There you go.
Yeah, well, I was just double checking everything. We got audio. With- this is a complete and total rando stream. We've been trying to get together for the last couple of days. I sent
Okay.
out the invite to everybody, and yeah, we decided to just run with it. I've sent out the invite to a few different people. You can hear me, Mike, loud and clear.
Sure can, buddy.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Um, I got Lucive's free off and Rich and Spirit in the background playing, a guy that I worked with. So I don't think he'd mind. And then I got some of my other stuff on SoundCloud. Just to kind of get us started, I'm trying to start building a format for the show. I went out today and talked to some people. But to start off, I guess I'm Bad Ankle Bill as always. Much love and infinite mojo to you if you're listening to this, and even if you weren't. This is Mike at 60
Recky.
R
Recky.
60 RECCE on Twitter. I've got kind of a different setup today. We're working with multiple different things, but I'm gonna have to test it out. I know I got to switch things up if I want to switch to the front camera, but I can also share the screen at the same time. Um, Let me go ahead and pause this music in the background. And all right, what has been going on in your whole circle lately, Mike? This past week since we've talked, I know that I've binged The Mandalorian. I wanted to talk to you about that. That's in my show notes. I have show notes, Mike.
I am so
We're
proud of you.
doing it professional like.
We're gonna structure things, yeah.
Structure it. Got the structure in the show notes.
But as far as the last little while, I think well, we're in print. We're in print right now for the Phantom Menace Volume One. So we're just waiting for that to be palletized and delivered, and then distribution will begin. And like I said, I hope in the first couple of weeks of January, most people everywhere will be getting those anyway. For anybody out there that might know what that is, it's part of the Indosphere community. Comicsgate will be part of it. Gamergate, the Weebs, all these different, I guess, community types of factions, all comprise part of an Indosphere. And so the Phantom Menace is just sort of I guess, one of the larger segments of that. They follow sci-fi type stuff like Doctor Who and Battlestar Galactica, Star Wars, Star Trek, Babylon 5, and all these sorts of interesting properties. And so they have lots of different opinions and things to say, as various types of these fandoms do. And so I guess in a way we are kind of building a project to reflect some of the opinions of the community. And the first volume is really where did we come from and how did we get here. And so as we progress through the volumes, it's going to be, I guess, an exposure of the different people that comprise our community. And so it's sort of a fancy yearbook, I guess you could say, extended yearbook. And then, of course, some other projects that I have. We're always working on our own little comic mini projects, I'm sure. So I've got a couple of those things always going on for fun. But Bill had recently introduced me to a friend named Jeff Campos. And Jeff Campos has been working on a piece of literature that he's heavily invested in over probably 20 years, I think, by Jeffrey's estimate. And it's a fantasy type of anthropomorphic adventure tale, which is something that I'm not terribly familiar with as far as the creative writing sphere of that type of subject matter. But of course, for me, it's words, and Jeffrey is a very fluid and very organic writer. And so for me, it's fun to comb through because with Jeffrey, it's not worrying about where he gets his ideas or whether he has the ideas. He's so flowery with his literary descriptions that as an editor, I just have to worry about thinning things down a bit and not making too much exposition, because I believe the intention that Jeffrey has is to eventually go into a graphic novel format. And so I'd like to have it pared down enough to not make that process part of it so difficult as it sometimes is. And so obviously we'll have lots of concepts with Bill at that point, because I think Bill's agreed to do some of the preliminaries to get the feeling and the theme and the flavor of everything kind of established for Jeff. And then after probably February, March, we'll know better where we stand on that and go from there.
And I've also got in the coming year, I said something on Facebook, but I took it down. I'm always kind of apprehensive to announce stuff before I'm really going, but I kind of want to put the fire under my ass. Um, Thunder Chickens, obviously, I gave myself to the new year to start working on it again in terms of a crowdfunding capacity. I'm trying to line up my year as a start and also kind of as a map. Part of it was starting the streams 3 weeks before the new year. It takes 3 weeks to build a habit. Everybody else is going to be making New Year's resolutions and they're already going to be behind me. That's the kind of energy I'm trying to bring into the new year. I'm also going to be working with you on going to be working with you on a book that I've kind of had in my mind for at least 5 years, at least since 2013, called "What to Get for the Man Who's Lost Everything." I now have enough material to mine from. I have 126 pages that I wrote while I was in jail. I have 6 or 7 articles to pull from, and I have a grand unified narrative theory of existence to outline as a sort of closure to this piece. Um, but I'm going to be working on that with you and see what you can do with it in terms of your skills and in a way that is financially viable. It's really what you've been preaching about the Endosphere in action. It's really saying, we're trying to actually make some new things. We're trying to actually create something that is original, something that we own, and I try to stay out of the sort of politics of it. Um, but it can be tough. It can be tough to you can't, no artist is an island. So what can you do other than just try to bob and weave and dodge laser beams in terms of all that stuff. Um, but I know that you stay out of that aspect of it, but you're at least like somewhat adjacent to it just because you deal with it probably in a much more toxic fashion.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I've
Not
said it.
toxic from you, but like, you see the dark side of it.
Well, the environment. I mean, I've said in one of my articles, like indie work is hard on the head, it's hard on the heart, and it's hard on relationships, and it's also hard on the body, depending on how hard you drive it. And for some people that want to create in the indie as we've started to call things, those kinds of sacrifices don't really matter much to them, because the desire, the will, the motivation, the ambition, whatever it may be that's driving it, it overpowers that pain factor, and the reward is worth the risk. For other people,
Yeah.
though, that seem to struggle with maybe not necessarily the creative side of things, because some of these people are really creative, but
Motivation.
they've channeled their motivation and their drive into destruction, and tearing down instead of trying to build. And like I said, it's a shame for some of these people, because they're super talented people, and some of them are unable to do it alone. And in a collaborative environment, when you can't find partners, it can be a self-defeating process all on its own. But of course, that comes down to your personal behaviors, I suppose.
And if
And
it's
if
not destructive of very, let's say, if it's not destructive of sort of systems, if it's not destructive of like social things, then it's a self-destructive thing. Like I see that aspect of it.
and that
One of
happens
the guys
quite a
I
bit.
tossed the link to, yeah, he was in a to be frank, a cult with me. One of the articles I wrote is based on that experience. And it was a cult of very fringe NA, very overzealous NA type of people. But ultimately, like I was the one with the issues that led me to join a cult. So what does that say about me? But I've seen the self-destructive aspect. I've seen the aspect that. As Alan Watts puts it, a soul, what a precious thing, what a fragile thing. Better to anesthetize it, better to dampen it, less what if I break it? What if I lose it? Better to just destroy it.
Mm. And that's the
And some
thing
people
about,
put that outward, and some people internalize it. You know what I mean? Some people externalize it onto society, and some people internalize it onto themselves.
yeah.
And you've seen one
And
side, I've seen
I've
the other.
seen a lot of I've seen a lot of talk. I mean, obviously you and I are mental health warriors, Billy, and I've seen lots of talk lately about a lot of people making an issue of these sorts of things where some of the examples that we need to see in our communities aren't necessarily the example that people suffer.
Yeah,
That's not the issue. Everybody suffers. What the
yeah,
examples that we need to the examples that we should be seeing more of, or at least trying to, if we're able to, is to show people how you take that negativity and you can turn it into something completely different, and you
yeah.
can
And I
channel
was
that.
I posted up a meme about the Van Gogh, and it said, Van Gogh didn't need yellow paint to be happy. He had yellow paint because he was suicidal, which is why he wasn't allowed in the studio when he was suicidal. He didn't paint all his masterpieces when he was suicidal. He painted all his masterpieces when he was recovering, whenever he was feeling better, whenever he was feeling a little bit more hope for life.
Yeah,
And if anything should say something about the creative endeavor in 2019, going into 2020, that is bastardized in it is this almost to the point of worshiping your own suffering, worshiping your own self-destructive as a creative person, even whenever you see it as a hind thing.
hmm
There is this sort of putting it up on a pedestal of you know everybody wants to say. I think we wrote a little while back a thing like everybody wants to say like I'm hurt too, and that's okay, and then it becomes fetishized
hmm
because we're both people who've had that experience, but we're both people that can see the sort of taking advantage of that. Like when a celebrity says, "I suffer from depression," it's a fucking marketing move. It is a publicity move. It is not somebody opening
yeah,
up about their experience. In a lot of cases, in a lot of cases, it is. In a lot of cases, the people who really suffer don't open up about it. Robin Williams, and you see their death. You know. uh, All right, so I jotted down some show notes. I'm filling in a little bit of gap stuff, but I did have stuff I wanted to cover. First, I talked about the Mandalorian. Now, Jeff told me you had an alternative cut of that he
yeah.
was watching with you.
We found that, well, some of the opinion seems to be that there was a Boba Fett movie that everybody had heard about in preliminaries, that it had been sort of fleshed out, and after the failure of Solo, with an $88 million loss, and things not looking well after The Last Jedi, the wishy-washy what do we do kind of attitude seemed to become prevalent at Disney. And so we end up with the situation where we've tore a movie down to prepare it for television instead. And there are proper story arcs and developments in there, as there should be, but they've been split apart in
Yeah,
a way. And so there's a couple of episodes of fill. But what one of our community members
I can see
found
that.
was that if you took the first 4 episodes, we have an intro and a nice middle with a few crisis points and a climax, and then we have a resolution. And when that was all cut together, it ended up at about 2 hours and 12 minutes and 27 seconds or something like that, which made for kind of a pilot length type of a show. They
Yeah,
took out all
okay.
the credits. They took out all the credits and all the fill stuff in the middle that you see on, where they play the replays before every episode. And so
Mm-hmm.
they gave a dramatic black screen as a gap for 1.5 seconds in between the episodes, just to give a break before the next shot, basically. But it's all strung together very nicely. And when you watch the episode, it feels more like Star Wars should feel, because for me at least, Star Wars has always been an event, and part of the magic is the fact that everybody is together again, and you're going to a place to experience something together. And
Yeah.
small screen Star Wars for me has always been a a Rebels and a Clone Wars type of a thing. And so um, I'm very leery about Game of Thrones plot devices and television devices being used in our Star Wars. And
See, but the one thing I did want to say about it, like in my take, is totally biased because I grew up on westerns with my dad. I grew up on Gunsmoke. I grew up on John Wayne movies. I grew up on Clint Eastwood movies. I grew up on the man who shot Liberty Valance. My dad always talks about the man who shot Liberty Valance,
yeah,
and so that slow, very not so methodical, but taking its time sort of pacing I'm very used to. And like my first real solid thought about it whenever I was watching it was, oh my god, I wish my dad could have seen this.
Yeah.
He would have, it was, oh well, you should have seen it. It's space Star Wars, like in, but a Western, like
Hmm.
to space Western. He'd get
Yeah.
all excited, he'd get all, nerded out whenever the way he would get nerded out when he would.
Hmm.
And that was, so my take on it is biased, but I was really loving it. And I also, as you know, kind of like in my life had a big, pretty decent company watching it and was surprised. You know what I mean? So that I can't sit there and say that I have a completely unbiased take. I'm not trying to, like, with everything, the whole concept of journalism effect, I can't take myself out of the story. Um, now,
Just before we go any further, can you pop the link in the private chat for me, Bill? And while you're penciling away, I'll do a couple of retweets.
yeah, link to the, you want
The YouTube,
the
the
actual
YouTube
stream
link.
that they could jump on, the
No,
YouTube
the
link.
YouTube
Okay,
link so
yeah,
they could watch. Yeah, we'll get some
I
viewers,
got
and
you.
then I sent a couple of notes as well to people perhaps who might want to come. But we'll see. There was 3 or 4 other streams going on tonight, so Sunday night around this time is like prime time. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I accidentally closed the wrong
but
tab or the wrong.
but yeah, as far as the Mandalorian on the small screen, I think that if you I think that he put it up on a torrent. I think so. You might be able to check it out. But in any case, it feels more like the event. It feels more like the movie experience that some people might be looking for. And for people that aren't quite sure whether they even want to bother with Star Wars after what Disney's done in the movies, it might be a quicker way than binge watching them with all the commercials and all the stuff. You could just sit down and do it in one go, and then you would know. Well, should I bother watching any more of this? And to be honest with you, I'm not the most unbiased person when it comes to Disney Star Wars, but I will say that this approach is something that the fandom deserves and that the fandom's been waiting for. I think that in some ways we've been so starved for decent Star Wars content that we're willing to take a bowl of crap with sprinkles on it in certain ways, just
See, I
because
don't
we're
know. I think that's
starving.
a little unfair. I think that's
Well,
a little
no, but
unfair.
people are starving for real Star Wars content, and so.
I get what you're saying, but like, I'll take it. You
But
know
the
what I
thing
mean?
is,
I won't let you get force in the mouth.
well, I do have to say though, that some of the character development that's been done here is truly amazing to be done in such a
Yeah.
small space on a show that has no legs yet. The best director, because they've had guest directors on almost nearly every episode in the first season. The person to watch out for is Deborah Chow.
Yeah.
Uh, they say that we're the Phantom Menace and that we're a bunch of women haters and all of this nonsense. I think that she is the best Star Wars director since Empire, and I think she's got 2 magnificent episodes in the first season, and just those for the technique that she uses, that she brings to Star Wars for her action, is something that needs to be seen.
Oh, I
Um,
forgot to get you the YouTube.
I want to see more of her next season. My favorite character so far is Cara Dune, another female. My third favorite character is the matriarch of the Mandalorian clan in this particular series, who is a female, it just so happens. In the latest episode, spoiler alert, I won't spoil the episode, but there's a fight scene where she destroys 8 stormtroopers with a forge hammer and a set of tongs. And I'm telling you, it's awesome. And so
Can you see
that's.
comments on that end? I
Do I
put it in
see
the public
comments?
comments.
Oh, in the
Yeah.
publics, yeah. Yeah, I can see it
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
no worries.
great. It's
That's
it's
good.
in there. We
Yeah.
get 2 people watching. If you're watching and you're like listening to us, feel free to comment in the chat. I'll make sure it's still working. Um, you know, I kind of like when people chime in. I've had a couple streams where you get some feedback, and it's always fun. So if you want to chime in with what your thoughts are on anything, feel free to post in the comments, and I'll check it out. Gotta go to my
I'm just going to put my avatar on because it's lagging me out and I don't want to chop the stream when we're. So.
yeah, just mine. So that's good. All right, the let's see. I'm gonna bring my screen back up, work a little bit more. Um, what other shit did I wrote down? Let me check my phone. All right. Oh, I had this experience and I wanted to run this by you. I was talking to my friend Sika, And first and foremost, we are getting guests, not just guests that are like our buddies, but like people who do shit, people who do interesting shit. My friend Amara is an amazing artist. My friend uh, 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 Jessica is an amazing small businesswoman. I went over and I talked to them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my equipment, as humble as it is, over there, and I'm going to do some work. I'm going to go around their studio, and I'm going to um, show off their studio, talk about their process, talk about how the layout of their studio affects their process, talk about how they started, talk about what they're doing, just their thoughts on anything, and then get you guys in a way that Amara is a very liberally minded, reasonable person, and I think those are rare nowadays. And I
Hmm.
think you would really enjoy chatting with her because I want to get different perspectives on things, and I think we're all reasonable people that like to have reasonable and fun discussions and discussions that vary. Um, so yeah, and I'm going to do the stream from over there, and going to do the same thing. Going to be able to work from my tablet.
Hmm.
Going to be in their studio on their comfort space. Going to have multiple camera views in the same place, and also have voices from the outside. And we're going to see what we can do with that because I really think that there's a lot of talent here in this area that's local enough that we could do
Oh yeah,
something that was
absolutely.
very interesting and maybe branch out from there with it and just as a part of an aspect of a bigger thing, which is
I think studio
really
tours. I think studio tours in your area is a great idea, and in our local area here, we have studio tours along the craft route. So it's a great
and they're
idea. I think that would be
longtime
awesome.
friends.
Oh yeah,
They're
absolutely.
longtime friends. They're people I've known for years, if not decades,
Hmm.
and they they're people who how do you say people who are I have a very personal relationship with, and I have a an admiration of their professional capacity. I have close personal relationships with them, and that like I know them in real life,
Hmm.
and I know that can be so superficial in some aspects, but also like those are the people the people around you, the people that are
Sure,
convenient. Well,
sure.
I know you because we've spent so much time. Um, oh, Kitty, we've spent so much time. You're gonna grab that. You're gonna grab that
Oh,
wire hanging and not
oh.
get some camera time. You think? You
I
think?
wanna. I've been
You
waiting
think
for
kids are
Toothless. Oh,
bad?
there's
You think
Toothless.
kids toothless?
There's
Yep.
Toothless.
You think kids are
Oh.
bad? Oh, they're. But you know what? These are the little lights in my life, and I'm going to have to get three of them home. This one is staying with me.
She's got to
But
stop getting stuck. She's got to stop getting stuck in the cubbyhole, buddy.
oh, my little neighbor. I was like, no, no, not that.
But if you want to do some
Um,
if you want to do some retweets, Billy, I'll give a little bit of a historical reference just to kind of maybe entice people who might not understand what the Mandalorian stuff's all about if they're not Clone Wars folks or anything. So,
do you tag me and stuff?
and so for what I assume to be being established for this particular series is that in the history, when the Empire invaded Mandalore, of course, Mandalorians weren't having it, and their culture is based on warfare, and the currency that they inevitably came to use for the most powerful families and clans on the planet was this rare mineral called Beskar, which is likened to a kind of stainless steel. It's rare enough, and the deposit of it enough just happened to be concentrated on their particular world. Game of chance, basically. And so they defended it and used it for all of their weapons technologies and mechanical purposes. When the Empire obviously annexed their planet and invaded, it was under occupation. The planet inevitably was destroyed physically, and so truly the Mandalorians can never go home. And like a lot of the Jewish culture, the history of the Jewish culture during the diaspora from the Exodus after their enslavement in Egypt, and especially after Roman times, being spread throughout the world, a similar situation happened with the Mandalorians. These clans have been separated, their families have been shattered and smashed, they've lost history, culture, language, all of it, so that the Mandalorians technically aren't even a race anymore. They're just a creed, a a creed to follow or a way of the warrior, as it were. And so what we have in this story is a clan who lives in what they call a covert, which of course is a secret cabal, I guess you could say, and they act as mercenaries in an honorable capacity in order to fulfill contracts for various purposes. This particular clan is ruled by a matriarch. A lot of uh, feminist activists have been complaining that there's not enough female representation in the show. Um, I must say, in the first episode, there's a point that comes in the chamber of the matriarch where she doesn't speak, she doesn't give orders, she's a quiet leader. And two of her male warriors have a personal issue. They draw weapons upon each other, and nobody in the room is gonna stop them. This warrior culture allows you to establish your boundaries up to the point. And they're not going to stop, obviously, but all she does is start speaking. And she's not even speaking about their combat. She starts talking about the business of the day, and everything stops. Everything
Yeah.
stops. Their blades literally stop at their throats. And so she doesn't
Yeah.
she doesn't rule with fear. She doesn't rule with force. She rules with respect that it is very apparent that her troops have for her.
So what you're
That's
saying is they can make a woman in Star Wars without being like she's not bossy, she's a boss bitch, like without
she's
bringing
every
that stank to it.
she's a people's leader. She's not a man's leader.
Yeah.
She's not a woman's leader. She's a people's leader.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why she's respected. And like I said, she used a hammer. She's a forge smith. She's the forge master for the clan. And so what they've done is, because they can never go home, this one clan ruled by this matriarch has traveled throughout the galaxy, you know, searching out the different corners of the diaspora to bring what they call foundlings, which are members that are incorporated into the clan, members that are lost and refound from the clan, to bring everyone back together again. They've gone so far as to take it upon themselves to take as payment, if possible, melted down Beskar steel from their home that they are literally recollecting one piece at a time. And when they acquire it back to their control again, they are literally encasing their bodies with home. They can never go back there, so they've brought home to them. And they wear it,
I got you.
and it's part of them as a religious icon almost. And so, what this means for
So that
Star Wars,
lore really adds to that lore. They don't really go into that, and that actually, I think
and
that could have added to it. I can see
well,
where
they
some of
don't
like the frustrations with stuff like that.
they haven't gone too far into that detail so far, but as a writer who's someone who's very much picking it apart, I mean, I understand some of the background lore obviously, and so I can see the
Yeah.
spirit of how this is being approached, and I truly believe that John Favreau has seen a family, our family, that's broken and divided and fractured, and he's
Yeah.
taken a piece of Star Wars lore that involves a broken and shattered family that's literally in pieces, reassembling itself, bringing itself back together, and making itself whole again. And everybody wants to believe that this is a story about a baby Yoda and an intergalactic babysitter. It's not. It's a family trying to build itself back up again after being destroyed. And I think that's what our fandom needs. And I hope that if John Favreau watches shows like this at any time, that he understands that at least some of us out here see, I think, what you're trying to do, John, and we appreciate it because it is necessary, it's important, and ultimately it
How's
will be
this
valuable.
Hawk look?
I think it's
How's
looking
this look?
amazing, brother.
Is that more in line with what you were thinking whenever we talked about the style of it? Because I was really closing things off, and this just changing the format to a square format really opened it up. Um, I definitely want. I've designed works from the ground up multiple times. Designed Thunder Chickens from the ground up. Designed Double Jumpers from the ground up.
Yep.
I've done color design. It's just taking all that stuff and giving the sincerity to one of our own projects. I mean, at this point, Jeff has included us to the point where we definitely have a lot of sway in how things are going to be presented, and also in how
Mm-hmm.
things, are going to be run. Obviously, with some of his actions, in a
Mm-hmm.
way that should anything happen to him, the idea, the concept is entrust to us. And then that really surprised me. And it's things have been so crazy lately that I haven't got a chance to really meditate on that and what that means and the responsibility of it. And
Well, my
wanting
interpretation of
to.
that is just to make sure whatever his. I mean, it's not like estate work; it's just the IP work. And if this is what Jeffrey wants, then this is
Yeah,
what
but
Jeffrey wants.
that's for me. I have a friend who died of ass cancer, Marcus Almond. Unfortunately, we had kind of a falling out, but that's because of my rough days. And whenever he got sick, I heard about it from afar, and he was right on the verge of having something that I had talked to him many nights about getting published by Oni, I think. And it all fell through as soon as he just had a botched surgery, died on the table. Um, and he was so close to achieving his dream as a comic book creator, and I can't help but always think of Marcus. I regret that I had a falling out with him because it was all on me. Stuff that maybe I'll talk about in the future. How I have been the dastardly villain in the outskirts of the indie comics sphere for about a decade, and kind of just now trying to play a different character, I suppose. Don't you dare look at that wire. Turn this into a kitty stream again.
Don't be chewing any wires, kitty.
This is little Buddha. Little Buddha's got the split face design, that tortoise shell split face. It's almost perfectly down the
She's a
middle.
cutie.
He's the chill one. She's the chill one. Yeah, I forget. There's only one boy. That's nameless. The tabby cat.
Oh yes.
Um, Let me see. I haven't even checked to see if anybody's coming in a minute. I'm trying to keep. I'm switching between working and checking to see if anybody's coming in and checking to see if anybody's watching. So kind of doing it fast and loose, but I want to start developing a more natural, format that doesn't feel stilted, but just has some notations. I had an interesting thing situation happen, and I wanted to run this by you. I was joking with Jessica about this, and I have you. People talk about catching someone out on a lie, but have you ever caught someone in the middle of deciding if they were going to lie to you?
I've seen like the deep breath before the plunge, and you can see it in their faces sometimes. I guess. Why did you have an
Yeah.
experience? Did you have an experience today, Bill?
Uh, yeah, it wasn't today, but it was funny because it was I was bringing up something very personal. I meditated on it for a while, and I didn't want to come at it wrong just because it was a very personal situation. I don't want to say that, but and I didn't want this person to feel like I was attacking them because of the third party. I didn't want to have to deal with any of it, and I got the who said that, them, and then they looked down. Well, it would have been, let's see, it would have been like down and to their left. So that would have been a
Yeah,
memory.
that's what it
So
is. I think it's yeah down and to the
I
left. That's
knew
what they say.
Vac Vam. Yeah, I remember that. So it would have been a memory,
Yep.
and for most people, and I just in that moment it was one of those. Okay, which way are you going to go with this? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because I was like really trying to not come at them in an attacking way. And it was just an interesting, like I'm a guy who kind of pays attention to my own consciousness a lot, and it helps me pick up on little things with other people in a way that is interesting to say the least.
Hmm.
And it was just one of those experiences. You always hear, I caught him out in a lie, but you ever just catch people in that moment where they're making a decision, like which way is this
Well,
going
you
to
see the
go?
yeah, you see the wheels turning. Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
All right.
as far as the anthropomorph here, Billy, the only thing I mean, I know you're very preliminary here so far, but all I see is a better transition between the greaves and the boot, and a ribbon at the top of the gauntlet. Basically, is really all I would say. Because other than that,
A
he
better
looks
transition
powerful.
between what?
The greaves and his boot. It looks like he's wearing a kind of
Yeah, like little
uh,
like
like
shin
a
gauntlets.
like a Converse. Well, he looks like he's wearing Converse shoes with kick-ass greaves.
See, I don't know. I'm kind of digging that style. Like I was gonna make it all like a hard kind of metal, but you know
Oh,
what I mean. Like I wanna
you can, but why don't you do them in the Sabaton style with the little pointy toes?
Sabaton. I'll
Sab-
Google that. But
this,
that's why it's good
yeah.
to kind of work on some of this stuff on the stream
Hmm.
because you can pull for
I think it
like I
might
don't even
be.
know what Sabaton is. You can pull from references that I don't even know in terms of visual
Oh,
experimentation.
it's the Cavalier's
Let's
metal
see.
boot that has the pointy toe on
Let
it.
me look
You might have seen them on
for
some horseman's armor and stuff like that,
desktop.
medieval stuff. Um,
Or
but in any case, a lot of people are saying that this show is all about Baby Yoda. And look, a lot of the fellas in our side of the community are really upset about Baby Yoda. Um, I'm a dad. So for me, I see Star Wars in a whole bunch of different levels and layers. I was a prequel hater until my children started watching Star Wars and they watched it and I saw how it enveloped them. And I thought to myself, well, wait a
yeah,
second. There's parts of this that are appealing to me, even though there's parts of the prequels I don't like Jar Jar Binks. But Jar Jar Binks is what drew my children into that story. And if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have the love of that I have, even though I can't understand the character. Okay. And so in this particular case, there's tons that true legacy fans need to see. But what new generations of fans need to see is something that they can connect with it. And this little baby Yoda does that for a great variety of people. I mean, everybody loves him. He's a little baby Mogwai. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
the point is that if you sit and you watch this with your children, they don't understand the legacy aspects that we expect to be there for story treatments and crisis points and character development. They don't give a shit about that. What they give a shit about is being entertained. What we're saying is for as parents, for our money, it better be something that appeals to a family because this isn't children's entertainment; it's family entertainment. And so I'm glad that
Yeah.
Baby Yoda is in there, even though I find it hard to believe that you're going to have this adventures in babysitting across the galaxy and how how is this youngling going to survive this. I mean, I know he's got all these superpowers apparently that nobody else has, and that's all wonderful and everything. But I I I, I think that some stakes have to be established with this baby because he's
I
come
can
too
feel
close
you
to death.
there.
He's come too close to death. I mean, we just had in episode 7 a character that a lot of people love, Queel, and
I can dig that.
it, it was
The
it was it
stakes
was
are
it,
really cartoony. You don't really worry about Baby
a
Yoda
lot
that
of
much.
people well, a lot of people were saying, please don't get into Game of Thrones killing characters in Star Wars, please. And I agree.
Yeah.
But I will say that Queel was a meaningful character, and that for the death to come in the way that it did, in a
Oh, I
sac,
think you're
in a,
spoiling something for me there. You
oh well, sorry,
spoiler. No, no,
sorry,
go ahead. I don't care. I spoil shit for
the
myself all the time,
the
and
death was
like I said,
on
it's more the
the
experience of watching it.
the death was honorable and it was made in the sense and a spirit of sacrifice, and therefore it's
Uh
definitely worth it for the story because now it costs something.
huh.
Now for the reader, the reader's in the story now because now they've lost something, and now it's important. Now it matters, and so that's well, you and I both know, Billy, for storytelling that's extremely important. And so I'm sorry to say that it took till episode 7 to establish something like that, but I will say because of the speed the episodes go, that was a great ending for 7 to lead into the cliffhanger for 8. Story wise, editorial wise, that in that regard was a good decision. Um, Whether you want to talk about Mandalorians taking their helmets off or not, and how I feel about that, you know as well as I do. Keep the helmets on, and so
Yeah, it's like the origin of Wolverine. It was cool because it took them forever to do it, and even then, it still ruined the mystique. Why blow your load right there? Don't you
well,
do
that's
just want to get
and
the
that's it,
headphone
and that's it,
cord.
and it really comes down to keeping some mystery in Star Wars. And so, for example, the shot where we can potentially, wherever it comes, where we can potentially have the helmet removed, there is a way to make a shot where you can take his helmet off and we're not seeing his face because the Mandalorian culture dictates that once you put that mask on, no living thing sees your face. It's a brotherhood, not an individual. Um, it's an obligation, and it's voluntary, but it's an obligation. And so, um, when that moment arrives, I hope they don't show the face. I want that mystery. The person who plays the Mandalorian is very well known to the community already. Okay, he'll be attending
Yeah,
many conventions. He's been in other work before. Everybody knows what he looks like. His job is to portray a character. It is not to glorify the actor, it is to play and portray a character. That helmet should not come off. And that is the aspect of their clan that's been established. They can't violate the canon they've just established by taking his helmet off. As
I can
far
feel
as
you there. I can definitely
as
feel you
far as
there.
villainy goes, we can take that another step and go back to Last Jedi with Kylo Ren taking his mask off. What is going on? You,
Yeah, I can
Darth
dig that.
Vader. Darth Vader had his mask off for a minute and 37 seconds after 6 hours and 72 minutes of film. There's a reason for
Yeah,
that, because it's intimidating. not only to your enemies
It's
but
an
to your own
archetype. It's an
troops.
archetypal representation, and the fun thing
Yeah,
about archetypal representations is the
you don't
exploration of
take the
archetypes.
source you don't take the source of your villainy and the source of your power and intimidation away by taking it off. You don't disarm, especially
Yeah,
in Last Jedi. He's interrogating somebody. What are you doing? Like, that's
I
ridiculous.
can see that. I can
um,
definitely see that.
I think it's a place where, I mean, think about it from a directorial point of view and trying to put the production together. We have all these actors freaking out about social media and everybody's harassing people and all this nonsense. Well, why don't you leave the helmets on, and then you can rotate actors through there. Nobody's faces have to be shown. They can participate without having to be public spectacle, number one, and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
But what do we need instead? A
Yeah.
bunch of attention e-whores. Well, show his face, show his face, show his face. How about we follow Star Wars lore, and you guys just enjoy the show for what it's supposed to be instead of telling us how it's supposed to be?
Hmm.
Because Star Wars used to teach you how to think, not what to think. And right now, it's a little bit too much on the one side, and so it's like that in a lot of IPs. I mean, look at Terminator Dark Woke. I mean, has there ever been a more dreadful cinematic failure with a glorious IP than that? And I told you, when the normies come out of the theater and they're shaking their heads going, what the hell just happened here? That's when things are going to start changing. And they
Yeah.
did not like what happened with Terminator. I mean, look at the box office. Charlie's Angels, even worse. What the hell happened?
I was watching Midnight's Edge on that about how much Terminator bombed financially at the office, and it's
$2.3 million on an opening night on a Thursday. What is going on?
mm,
Horrendous. And what did they do the very next? She didn't even join the $100 million losers club. What did they do the next week? They gave her another movie.
yeah.
What is going on? Eventually, the investors are going to say, "Okay, wait. I thought we were here to make money. We don't give a shit about stories, but I thought we wanted to make money." And eventually, all this political crap is just going to have to go where it belongs, in the dustbin, because that's not what entertainment is about. Entertainment's not about educating people. Entertainment is about helping people to escape. And
This
this
is
is
Buddha's darker twin, LaVey, named after Anton LaVey of the Church of Satan.
there you go.
Yeah.
See
What
the
else
shit
did
to
I
stir
have
bread?
written down to talk shit
You
about?
see the
Yeah,
little
that he lives. She lives up to her name for sure.
shit to
I
stir
keep
bread in the
actually
house,
calling
yeah.
Shane. We talked earlier with a couple of friends of yours in a way that was very natural, and one of the things that stuck out to me was
Oh, you mean when we were in the
um,
studio this afternoon? Oh, yes,
yeah,
okay,
that
yeah.
it came up. Stop asking for permission, and
Yeah.
I think that's a bold statement in
Well, to be
terms.
honest with you, I hope that Trisha's still watching. She said she was watching. I sent a link. I hope she's watching. But we can elaborate a little bit more on that, because I had a conversation with a kind of a person that I just met in the last 36 hours, I guess you could say, just light chatter. And this person's been a creative person, and has encountered resistance and distraction and discouragement. And we were talking about that a little bit earlier in the afternoon, Bill, obviously. And I mean, I know for you and I, no matter what happens, we just keep on going, probably starve to death at our desks. But for people that might not have any kind of success behind them, to have the confidence to just push it forward no matter what anybody says, it is very important to put your head down. Like, you're only supposed to be doing what you like. The Indosphere is such a ginormous place that if you like what you're doing, I guarantee you that there's somebody out there that likes it too. I guarantee it. And so, really, you just have to do the things that you love to do, that you feel good and get satisfaction out of. I guarantee you that someone else will feel the same. And as an artist, you know as well as I do, Billy, if I can change one person's point of view with one of my articles, or if I can help someone to see in a different perspective because of a project that we've put together, even if it's just one person, that changes everything. And that's
For
all it should matter.
me, especially as of late, it has been, and I've talked to you about some of this, it has been a very spiritual kind of ride in that I've kind of reached a point where if anything, if things never got any better than they were right now, I would still be happy. But I'm also kind of like tasked with I have to do this to show what is possible to other people and
Of
from the ground
course.
up. And from we're a bucket full of ain't shit with the two of us, but
Well,
like but from the ground up, like we both have time in. I have like let's see, about 15 years since my first paid gig, about at least a decade since my first like of comics work in some capacity or another, or at least being
sure.
published. Biggest public failure was exactly a decade ago. Part of why I'm, going back to Thunder Chickens and giving it a good college try in this environment, in this climate, whenever it comes to doing crowdfunding, because, about 3 years ago or so, 3.5 years ago now, I wasn't prepared. I was just putting it out just to put it out.
Hmm.
Just because I knew if I didn't just put it out, I never would. I would always come up with some reason as to why I couldn't. Um, but I learned from all the failure of that, and I've learned from a lot of just personal failure since then. I've talked to you a little bit about some of it.
Hmm.
Um, and if I can, I'm behind on my rent again this month. Actually, not yet. It's not the first yet, but I'm basically,
No, no, you've got
and
a couple days, Billy. There's still time for commissions.
yeah, but I'm doing the damn thing, and I know that no matter what, I'm gonna keep doing the damn thing, as my sister used to always put it. Let me check
That's right.
on the
Yep.
stream. I don't see anybody. I hope nobody jumped. I got Facebook and Twitter up just to see if anybody happened to say anything, but no, it might just be me and you tonight. But that's good because this week is going to um, be interesting in that we're going to be having different guests on. We're going to be having creative people on that are doing something very, very different from us, that have very, very broader from um, my friend Sika Jessica, who is the most dudist person who would probably never say they're a dudist, just a very practical woman,
Yep.
and my friend Amara, who is a pagan high priestess, and my friend Toothless here, who won't stop attacking my headphone cord because he's been a little attention. She's a little attention whore, and she knows she's my favorite, and she thinks she can get away with shit. And then right here, I have Nameless. This is the only boy in the group. And oh my goodness, seeing these go from it's been a weird, weird holiday from about all the way through the holidays, um, going back to Halloween. To be honest, um, between that, some other personal stuff in my life that me and you have talked about, to I guess feeling more confident in my craft, both as an artist and as, to be frank, a magician in the occultic sense. It's been a very, very strange experience as of late, and the best I can do, like any Gonzo journalist, is attempt to capture it and attempt to kind of show other people, like, I'm not special. You're this too. You just got to find your groove. You just got to find your, connection to the great magnet, as Hunter Thompson would put it. Um, so and that sounds, I hope that never comes across as like false humility, because it's the first time I feel like I'm kind of approaching things from a pure place, creatively, without as much fear. And I don't have the proof of on the receipts yet, but I feel like things are going to go very, very well in the next year, especially with all the crowdfunding stuff, especially with working with you, especially with working with Jeff, especially with advancing my situation with Karis, advancing my situation with two guards. This Neopet style game client is going to get back to me after the first. Hopefully, they're going to have more work for me because I really, really enjoyed some of those. Some of them haven't even been shown publicly yet. I might
Sure.
show one off that I've been so eager to show. Actually, it's on my website, but I haven't really got a chance to post it. It was a fifth dimensional time toy, as I put it.
Hmm.
Open this up. File. Open.
Ah,
I
what do
think
we got going on
these
here?
second passes are coming across interesting. Let's see. Pokemon
I
stuff
like your little
here.
weasel fellow there.
Yeah, yeah. The bottom one is the first pass. Let me open up
Hmm.
time toy. This is the top one is the second pass. Trying to dirty it up a little bit, but this was a really interesting design and one that, like, again, it kind of coincided with some really weird elements in my life. And I wholly believe that art is magic, depending on how you want to define either of those words. But the more that I believe art is magic, the more magical shit starts happening. So, as Alan Moore put it, be careful doing something as silly as declaring yourself a magician, because you might wake up one day to find out that's exactly what you are.
Hmm.
And then the voices in your head will tell you you have to tell everybody and put it into your work so that people can think you're a fucking gibbering madman. Did you hear that right? They all
Yeah, I
say
sure
it.
did.
Every single motherfucker that hears some weird shit. It's like it's coming from somewhere outside of me. They say,
Yeah.
"Tell everybody." They all want to hear your crazy theories, Bill. It'll do the world good.
So
Oh my goodness.
what's next on our outline, Billy? Oop.
Actually, I think we're pretty much freed. I had another video I wanted to make. Let me, matter of fact, I send my documents. Let me open up these documents and see what I'd written down. In an absolute creative mania, I wrote down some ideas for a video, and they can be very abstract. Let's see, contracts. I want to start getting into more video-oriented stuff.
Mhm.
Um, was that tuna one? Tuna one was it? Video. Open. Keep using that app. I know. I was in a very. Let's see. I called it. I wanted to do cartoon in the zen of not killing yourself.
Well,
This is
you should have the
holy
round
shit, so
table of
crazy and
creative
even
spaces.
surprised. That's pretty fucking. That's pretty metal. Cartooning in the zen of not killing yourself. Let's see what my fucking manic ass wrote down. Made this channel for completely different reasons than this. I thought maybe I'll make a channel where I can tout the benefits of cartooning in an industry all too obsessed with realism. And that's I'm talking about the alternate channel, the tune up. I forgot I wrote this. I must have been drunk. It will always in there. It would always. I've been taking letting put it in the back seat, going to meetings and stuff. People take my inventory about how I approach the whole addiction aspect. All I know is that my life is better than it was whenever I started going in the rooms, regardless of how I approach the whole 12-step sort of structure. It will always inevitably fall short of maybe if I just show them my devotion to the craft of cartooning, they'll all love me and I won't ever eat ramen again. Wrong. Here's the truth. Obviously, nobody loves you. You're gonna die alone and untouched. I was just really good when I said that. Oh god, I don't even remember this. Oh god. Oh lordy. Oh. Bring your mic up. Bring your mic up again. I'll be quiet. I promise, Mike, I'll be quiet. That may sound cynical, but that sounds cynical. The voice in my head says, pretending that it's you, pretending that I'm not just pretending to be high energy. Wait, but that sounds cynical. The voice in my head says, pretending that it's you, pretending that I'm just not pretending to be high energy when I'm actually in a dark place right now. I hear you say. But you're just a voice in my head. Nobody gives a fuck what you think. So here's why I like my cartoons more than I like most of you people. This is all true. This is all so true. Oh fuck. All right. Number one, most people suck, myself included. Number two, people are just the cartoons of our loneliness. Mike, I need your input on that one. I need to open your mic up. Open your mic up, please. Please.
Oh, I didn't even know I was on mute there, buddy. I was roaring, laughing so hard it probably would have made a big ruckus. I
People,
apologize.
I want you to dissect this phrase with me.
You've,
People are just the cartoons of our loneliness.
they are, they are.
It makes so much sense, and I don't know how.
Yeah.
That is some.
Deep.
Number three, quantum physics is a thing. Number
Yep.
four, Nirvana is just suicide for the enlightened.
Enlightened. That's right.
Remember
And fucking
Nirvana?
cheaters.
And I was thinking, that people reach enlightenment so they can escape the cycles of samsara in a lot of Eastern traditions, and
Sure.
so like I was like I could become enlightened just so that if I like die I won't be back in this hellhole. So like but Nirvana is just suicide for the enlightened. I think that makes a lot of sense. Number
Yeah,
five, why
bunch of
bother?
fucking quitters, bunch of fucking quitters.
Why bother? Why? And
Yeah.
I think that's the point I was trying to get to is like why bother, and
Yep.
maybe comment on how creativity is its own gives its own meaning. Um,
Well, that was that satisfaction part we were talking about earlier, Billy. You
mhm.
shouldn't. Everyone should be, especially people that are approaching this community, because we talk a lot about grifters and people that come into the community. The only person that you should be making your art for is you. And like I told you earlier, if it's something that you find satisfaction of and that you find inspiring and that you find that it's enjoyable for you, I guarantee you there's other people out there that want to see it. I guarantee it. And you're a good example of that, Billy, because you have touched on some of the more fringier elements of the comic community in commission work, for example. So there's so many different flavors and tastes of people that like things out there. Sometimes they don't even want to buy your stuff. They want your style for their stuff. And so put yourself out there with what you like, and I guarantee you, people, people will follow it. So you just have to do what you like, and that's the only thing I can say.
Oh goodness,
You
yeah,
broke broke.
I'm still meditating. Or people are just the cartoons of our loneliness. I feel like there is some existential, philosophical, universal truth in that statement, and I'm the
Absolutely.
one that wrote it, and I still don't know what the fuck it's supposed to mean on whatever levels I was on that night.
Well,
Oh lordy.
I don't know. I think that everything that when you're lonely and you're alone and you don't have any human connections, everything that you dream that you need at that time, when you're confronted with the reality of it, it is just an illusion. It was just in your brain because what you needed or you thought you needed isn't what you're confronted
I
with.
think what I was trying to get at was the idea that like we never really know a person, we only know what we project onto them.
Onto them. That's
And
right.
and it's
Yep.
always going to be a heuristic shorthand of their the multifaceted understanding of their reality. Whereas, we need a heuristic shorthand of lines to in order to create cartoons. We need a heuristic shorthand
Hmm.
of both cultural and social understanding in order to create our relationships. Because you never actually know the person; you just know the cartoon of them. You
Yeah,
know.
you can only find the context in common that you can establish between yourselves, and that's the baseline that relationships are built on. And there has to be a medium of trust. And if there isn't, there, well, I mean, that's the foundation of all relationships. I guess that's why I like the comic book medium and that kind of collaborative space the best, is because it really involves a preconceived notion that we have to trust each other to even be here. And a lot of collaborations work very streamlined fashions. You can tell it's almost like they put themselves together, and then there's other ones that can barely hold themselves together. It's like you got to
Yeah.
zip them up just to hold them together. And I think sometimes people that try to collaborate in that way when it's so difficult, I think maybe that they're trying too hard. And I think that there's so many different individuals to be able to work with out there. Don't limit yourselves and move around a bit, people. Don't be shy.
Yeah, it's really you got to keep moving. You got to keep moving fast. You got to keep putting shit out. You don't get a whole lot of breaks. You don't get the time to do what you want to do, and that's why like, I'm glad that slowly over time I've gotten, well, 20 pages finished as of right now, completely ready to read up on the site of Thunder Chickens. I've gotten another 6 pages penciled and inked. I've got 1 page penciled, and then I just gotta, ink that and then color those 8 pages. The last one's a splash page. It'll be easy, and do that over the course of this month, and be ready to print the first issue as soon as as soon as we launch the Kickstarter. Because I don't want there to be any question. And if we can get extra money raised for it, which I believe we can, to do it in a way where any extra money will go towards the making of Volume 2, which will be or Issue 2, Issue 3, which will be a stretch goal digitally for the first, how do you say, the first crowdfunding campaign. Um, and I tried to do that last time, but I was finishing up 15 pages of it while I was doing it, and it didn't time right. I didn't plan it right. There was so much going on in my personal life at that time that it's kind of good that it fell through because otherwise it might have kind of left a scar in terms of crowdfunding efforts, which you don't want if
Hmm.
people have long memories in terms of that stuff, and you see a lot of very opportunistic people. And I think we've talked about before in that article. I had to approach like, am I being opportunistic? Am I
Hmm.
being a fucking chicken hawk, and part of it was, and
Hmm.
so I stepped back from all of it because, like, above all things, the last thing I would want is for my creative, capacity to be perverted by opportunism, unless I actually have something to say. And I feel like
Well,
I
that's
said
the
what I
thing,
needed to
and
say.
I will give a quote out there to everyone in the industry, and I mean, if a good quote is a good quote, and so I'll give it. And the quote is the most brutal thing that you can do to a creative person is to destroy their motivation to create. And
Yeah,
just so everybody knows that, Ethan Van Sciver said that, and I think he's
yeah.
absolutely correct.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not.
And
I'm not.
like I have to step, like, whenever it comes to that stuff politically, I have to step back. But I was a fan of Cyberfrog whenever I was a teenager. I had Cyberfrog
I didn't bring.
comics.
No, no,
They were my
I didn't bring that up. No,
yeah.
no, I didn't bring that up to talk about
Like,
Cyberfrog. I don't want to talk about Cyberfrog at all. I just wanted to talk about a good quote about
but
creative people.
how people will take, and just because of there's issues, they'll automatically
Oh
be
yes.
like, you're on this,
Oh
But
yes.
I
Absolutely.
disagree with a lot of the way things have gone in terms of Comicsgate. I've just backed away from it. I
Oh,
think that the
absolutely. And
people.
you and I agree on those some of those things. Absolutely.
But out of all of these sort of refugee camps creates the Indosphere. You know what I mean?
It
Do
does.
you call it the Indosphere or the Indiesphere?
The indie sphere. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what creates it, is in the refugee camps of the culture wars, is where you find the creative Indie the
And you
people who
you
don't
find all
want
the sparks.
allegiances.
Yep.
Yeah, and you find people
You
who are
find
really about the
true
creative effort.
the creativity and the true independence, which is where the spirit of it all lies to begin with. So, I mean, that's
Hmm.
all good stuff. And I have to close us out while you're finishing up some of your beautiful red work there, Billy. I'll read a little bit to us about an article that I wrote from last year. If you want to put this
Oh,
up while you're
please do.
working,
Yes, yes, yes. Please do.
called "Independence Risk versus Reward in Comic Crowdfunding," and this is from August 26, 2018. And so, the growing world of indie comic work is a force in the industry, to be sure. It's not a new concept, of course. It dates back into the murkiest depths of comic history. And back then, however, the industry was sort of a closed system, and anyone who tried to go outside the formula or to push the bounds independently were quickly crushed, like a sort of whack a mole game, where the hammers were always in the hands of the heavyweights, and the best thing for the little folks to do was basically keep their heads down and hope not to draw too much attention. This, of course, always meant less exposure for those newcomers. And it's no wonder, with the kind of authority and power possessed by the big two, that things went on like this for a very long time. But we're in a new era now. Indie creators are making big waves, pushing limits, and making a mark on the scene. With some of their fresh and unique creations, they've also moved or rather flocked to new devices and methods in order to bring materials to markets. You need to be able to learn about marketing, about public relations, about how to manage people. It's a very overwhelming place to find yourself. But if you intend on making your mark, you need to consider all of these things and become a master of sorts in all of these aspects. And money, of course, can be a very big problem here too. Crowdfunding seems to be the way of our future here in the Indosphere, and how better to demonstrate the worth of your product than with a direct input and investment from those who intend on purchasing and supporting your work. And so, if we really want to push this new era of creativity and hopefully see a revitalization of our medium in comics, we need to get some things straight. People make mistakes, and real life gets in the way more often than we would like, and most times more than we can ever imagine. And sometimes we're making
Hmm.
decisions or promises that are actually impossible to keep, and the pressures and the expectations can be immense, and everyone involved must be on the same page. And in my opinion, the best policy for all of these stresses is honesty, integrity, and communication, and they are also the best medicines that overcome conflicts and false expectations. Properly
I like
worded
that.
and thoroughly precise wording in contracts is vital. And this is a very overlooked but necessary aspect of working with others professionally. And everyone must know what's expected of them before they dive in. This failure to do so is very often the reason for some really great ideas and some amazing work to be dropped into the bin in the indie world. A great number of folks out there have examples of how this can often come into play, and sadly, it can be more frequent than we would like. and projects get stalled whether through apathy or disinterest, and feelings and relationships are soured and spent. Deadlines are missed again and again. Disappointment combined with a lack of responsibility and self reflection often lead to more fracturing in this medium. And this is something that any of us who are supportive or involved in this process can ill afford. And this is especially true with the decline of readership and the overall disgust and apathy that has manifested itself over the politicization of our medium. These things are poison to the industry, and we must find new ways to innovate our working habits and our professionalism in order to keep our momentum, and not just for our own work, but for our little industry as a whole. But fear not. There are great examples of partnerships that are destined to dissolve that are handled with tact, understanding, and accountability. A close friend of mine, for example, recently lost one of his pencilers who dropped out of his project. And this is sad news to be sure. But the way the situation was handled by both of them is a very good example of how these things need not be destructive. And honesty played a huge part. Communication played another. Both parties understood their own limitations, but they also tried to understand those of their counterpart. And they dissolved their working relationship. The deposits were returned and both made public statements of support for the other. And this is how things should be. There are, of course, hurt feelings. Perhaps anger and resentments are there too, but you would not know it. Not publicly, anyway. And both of these individuals had enough respect for themselves, for each other, for each other, and for their fans to make sure that a project that hit a deadlock did not spill over into the community or the medium at large. And I see these two people as great examples of professionalism and mutual support and understanding. And so we need to see much more of this maturity and this devotion, not only to our medium, but to each other. And if we expect the industry of professionals and the general public to take on these new and innovative ideas, creations, and methods seriously, then we have to adopt a position of humility, support, and acceptance of each other as creators. And more importantly than all of this, we have to learn the difference between criticism and personal attack. And these two things have become horribly confused nowadays by those incapable of bearing criticism. They equate such feedback as an attack on their person, their dignity, or their identity, and unfortunately, this seems to be contagious to a degree. This is very disingenuous at the very least and willful ignorance at the worst. Those that have a hard time with this sort of thing must not confuse the two. It's not an attack to criticize something that's put into the public sphere. It can sometimes feel so terrible to have something that we have invested so much time, energy, and emotion to be subjected to the opinions of others. But everyone here must learn how to process and incorporate negative commentary in order to evolve their art and others' experiences with it. And why are we doing what we are doing in public if we cannot accept or tolerate the huge variety of interests and opinions that exist if we can't handle it? So let's be honest here. Nothing has ever been learned from a good mistake. I don't think there's any such thing. Pain is how we learn what not to do. Pain or stress is how we reason our ways into growth, if only we can allow ourselves to move forward with it instead of letting it dominate us and force us into a sort of stagnation or something that should be organic to something that should be organic and moving. And those who consume this medium and those who are involved in the creation themselves are very much invested in growth and permutation. And they are also the ones who are placed to observe and comment on the quality or the lack of it. And they really don't want to be part of a dying art. They want to see it succeed. Pushing forward through adversity is what makes most of us sharp. It's what makes most of us better. It gives us insight. It provides meaning and purpose to the things that we feel are important. Sharing and criticism are essential to this, so embrace it. It can only serve you well. It's easy to fall prey to the negative. It takes no effort whatsoever to be discouraged or depressed about these sort of things, and we've all been hooked into it at one point or another. But that's not the whole story, and we shouldn't allow ourselves to become jaded and bitter. That is the path of least resistance, and we must have more faith in ourselves and in each other than that. Putting ourselves out there through art is a very scary thing. It certainly is for me. And trusting those we don't truly know is nerve-wracking sometimes. If we treat each other with dignity and respect, and if we're truly honest with ourselves and are able to communicate effectively about our own limitations, some very amazing things can come to the fore. So do not be discouraged. Do not lose hope. Criticize, share ideas and disappointments. We must continue to support each other in our endeavors in this way. Accept it. There are great examples to draw from. You only need to look for them. Today's failures need not be tomorrow's flame wars. Criticism and temporary setbacks or even failures are not valid reasons to give up or even to allow those pitfalls to define us. Criticism and honesty are very powerful tools of growth, if only we can allow ourselves the opportunity to use them and absorb them. We must learn to digest it, understand it, and integrate it into our method, style, and more importantly, our thinking. The medium deserves it, the artists, writers, and most importantly, the readers deserve it.
I like that.
And
I agree with like
and
the entirety of that sentiment. I was thinking, I'm going to try to do more promotional stuff in the traditional, um, to make smaller videos. I think that me cracking up laughing reading that drunken list. That's a pretty. I mean, I think that that's what people do is that you need to try to find those sort of vivid moments and put them up. And yeah, like I was entertained by my own like drunken ramblings in that. So I think other people might be also to cut a
uh,
piece of you reading from your article in a way that shows because I had your screen up like half the time you were reading there.
oh, I see.
Um, yeah, so I've been switching back and forth when your screen's up, whenever it's up, and you're sharing it, just like I figure just as a format, like share it when you're like you've got everything ready to go, and you might want me to
Oh,
switch to it because I'm trying to
oh, sure.
figure out how to do those sort of things on the fly.
Oh, yes,
Um,
yeah.
and make it, but like also, it's visually interesting for people to I think see the creative process on these character designs, which I've burned
Oh,
through.
absolutely.
I finished off the last bit on the hawk. I got the weasel character, and I'm terrible
Hmm.
with names. I know that it's kind of probably bad that I can't even remember the weasel character's name, but
Well, the thing
it's
is that
more that
I'm still trying to get a handle on the names because Jeffrey has a very large volume of work and he has some very interesting characters and there's lots of them. And so
yeah,
that's not
and
entirely
I
your
can
fault.
feel out the sort of character archetype from the description. I've read as far into the book as this character is brought in, and it gives me enough of an archetype to at least start with. And Jeff's happy with the work. Um, I'm gonna have to start doing my time management better, and some of that is going to be working on Thunder Chickens live on the streams, which I neglected to do a lot of because I thought, well, if people see me making it and they know the story, they won't buy it. But I actually am seeing more that people support stuff more whenever they have that connection, that personal connection, and try to keep at least weekly, if not multiple times a week, with the YouTube streams in
Hmm.
a way that not only forces me to isolate time to focus on it, but get it to be now that I have the Surface Pro back. I can work from anywhere. I was stuck in that. We started all this whenever I was creatively kind of took a punch. My damn pen decided to not work, and I was just like I was stuck at that desk. And I am a guy who the whole reason I do any of this is to try to make a life that creativity can fold into
Hmm.
as a job where why carry your things in two different baskets when you can just I not having a boss is a big it's
Hmm.
something you can't really buy, and so
No.
I'm trying to get to where I'm more fluid with it financially, and doing my own shit instead of focusing on other people's shit. But I'm so happy with all the clients that I have right now, and I just need to get that consistency down a little bit
Hmm.
better, and I think that taking up the habit of this before the new year instead of making a New Year's resolution. It takes 3 weeks to start a habit, and so I was like, well, let's start now.
There you go.
And let's just start big stupid with it, and let's make memes for the thumbnails. Unless I have a guest on, or unless we're promoting Thunder Chickens, or unless we're promoting
Sure.
something specifically for the
I
fandom
got the
menace.
name. I got the name of that weasel is Belknap. It's a weasel
Yeah,
Belknap.
the
He's a master thief, King Orcon's elite guard scout. He's a very interesting little fellow.
I think if anything, it's just focusing on not just the YouTube channel as promotion, but how to promote the YouTube channel in a way that is appealing to amass, a bigger audience. And not, I always say that like it's only people that, we're trying to sell something that nobody was buying into that complain about sellouts. But that still is a part of, I guess, that the dumb ideas you have creatively. I want to kind of do something big just to be able to show other people what they can do and help maybe some of my creative friends get their stuff bigger. Having Amara on, having Sicko on, um, they are two very creative, very business oriented people, very modern small business, very modern pro, in a way that I think is indicative of where small business is going, and it's going online, and it's falling off of storefront faces because they're facades that don't need to be there. They're just extra overhead. People are running businesses out of their home. People are having their studio space and their living space shared, and there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing to be ashamed about with that. In fact, it's just streamlining the process. You know what I mean? I'm a divorced guy in my apartment. It's paid for with pretty pictures. You're as far as I know, a fairly Spartan, stoic, solitudinal guy, and it's why not have the work be right there, so every moment that you get a little inspired, you can just jump right in, you know.
And see, our spaces, your space and my space, were separated by distance, Billy, but our spaces are built and paid for with ink and paper.
Yeah, and it's
Mm.
and I can just, I really do have a lot of faith in the way things are going.
Yeah,
I
we're
think
gonna
we're
have a great
about to
time.
drop it out at that because we're at what? How long do we go? An hour and 15 minutes.
Almost,
Not bad for just two
no,
people.
not too bad.
Gonna I'm not sure how long things are gonna go this week in terms of. I'm pretty sure Jessica's gonna be first. I want to talk to both Amar and Jessica, talk about their schedules. They have both pretty open
Mm.
schedules, and I'm gonna write down a better kind of start getting a list of things in order to like actually a process of promotion, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
but yeah, right now though, I am doing the thing where open it, where I'm taking in a few more tutoring students, and I'm starting it out right now at $15 an hour in 4 hour blocks. So it's $60 for 4 hour blocks of tutoring, 4 hour blocks of art lessons. Um, it will be um, it will be made so that it's personalized to the skill level of the person that I'm teaching.
Hmm.
I've started teaching kind of low key, and I've only promoted it very, very small. But let me my screen back up. I've got this little thing I threw together. I need to maybe get a little bit better about my design in them, but I just wanted to get something out there. This was a part of a stream, one of the teaching streams that's only available to the person because students can get self-conscious. It's only available to the person. I am, however, going to see about maybe getting a student on and talk about a little bit about that. But and I'm just going big stupid with it. Want to learn how to draw more better? Botanicalbill.com. That's the kind of, I guess that's the kind of energy I like to throw off. For limited time, art tutoring available, $60 for 4 hours of online drawing mentorship, personalized to your skill level, plus bonus material. And over here we have a 90-minute process sketch that I did, which was one of the last sessions. And this was start to finish in a 90-minute session, going over everything we've gone over for months with this student in a way that takes each individual element and combines it into something that he can create a finished process. He can create a finished picture with a process that he builds based on these elements of process. And the basic idea is that every artist learns art backwards from what the process is. You start with composition, then you go into basic shapes. Then you go into basic forms. Then you go into more complex forms. Then you go into, the style. Some of that's in the shape. Then you go into the line art, and then you go into the finished inks, and then you go into colors. And most people pay attention. I remember back in the early 2000s, it was really popular to have this sort of certain style of coloring, kind of an indie offshoot of the liquid coloring studio that was so hot in the late 90s, early 2000s. And colorists were being like little indie superstars. And then, you have people that want to learn how to draw how Jim Lee draws forearms, but they don't want to learn the anatomy. The first thing you pay attention to is the gloss. The first thing you pay attention to is the surface, the shiny bits. And then as you go on, you say, okay, well, how do I do the form? And then as you go on, you say, okay, well, how do I break this down into basic shapes so the form is bolder? Then you go, well, okay, how do I do composition? Is usually the last thing that the artists do. And my teaching is based on that fundamental principle that artists learn the backwards from what the process is. So I switch it the fuck around and I focus on process. And I say the first lesson is composition. The first lesson is the most important thing, and it's usually the last thing people learn, and that is how to block basic composition shapes to direct the eye, to provide, to give momentum, to give energy to a piece, to give a feel to a piece, to give a sense of urgency to how the eye reacts to it, and the interaction between the reader or the viewer of a piece in terms of composition, and then we go forward from there through the process. And I found a really tight teaching process, I think, in that. And so I'm going to be promoting it harder throughout up through the new year, maybe a few days in, see if anybody's interested in taking me up on that. And if they take me up on the $15 an hour price, $60 for 4 hours of online drawing mentorship, personalized to your skill level, then they will lock in that price for the whole year. It won't raise until 2021. Fairly shortly after the beginning of the year, I plan on raising that price to $20 an hour. Because that I have realized, especially with what I know and what I've been able to build in terms of a process for teaching, that what the program that I have is at least worth that. And because there's a lot of supplemental material, there's a lot of behind the scenes going back and forth message here. There's a lot of time invested in the person beyond just the session work that's done online. And I really hope people are interested in what we do. As always, I'm Bad Ankle Bill. Bad Ankle Bill on everything. Bad Ankle Bill on Twitter. Bad Ankle Bill on Instagram. Bad Ankle Bill on Facebook, and even Bad Ankle Bill on SoundCloud. I'm going to start incorporating some more of that the into the show in little bits and into the sort of sound clips that are used in the shorter videos that I decide to cut for stuff. We were practicing a little bit of that with my boy Luciv, this rapper that I've worked with recently, and just let's see. Let me bring this up. See if I can do this fluidly. No, hide you. Let's stream to the living room while we're talking, and let me check the volume. And Mike, you are one of my favorite creative friends. You are a person that I admire your resiliency as a human being. You are a person that I love having in my small circle. And tell everybody where they can find you. Obviously, 60 Brett Chachi on Twitter. No, 60 RECCE on Twitter. Where else can people find you online? Oh, yeah, and badanklebill.com, of course.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you online?
Thank you for that, Bill. I'm 60 Recce on Twitter, obviously. I'm editor-in-chief of the Phantom Menace Project. I collaborate at Bleeding Fool, and I'm also the editor-in-chief of Rohig Press. We're going to be trying to do a lot of independent literature, including Billy's, Jeffrey's, and some other people's. So follow people on YouTube that you like, sub, and smash the like buttons on all those channels. Please subscribe to Bill's channel as well. We'll be trying to do authors, draws, and talks kinds of things throughout the time period going forward as the projects come and go. It's going to be a very, very busy year for independent work if that's the kind of thing that you're into. It's not just Billy and I and others that we might be associated that we're talking about. The industry as a whole. By June or July, we may have a traffic jam of great books crowdfunding, which will be a really interesting thing to see community-wide. And so please, everybody, keep your eyes open, support the projects that you like, and be good to each other out there. Thank you, Billy.
And if you need to get in contact with me, it's supremefictator at badanklebill.com. It's a lot easier. Just go to badanklebill.com, go to the contact page. You'll see the link up top. Going to try to take all these pieces of the puzzle and put them together. And your recent article inspired me in that I have an article that I've been putting aside to write based on some recent experiences, which is basically how to be a good soldier as an artist and how to take revisions, because I had two like kind of nightmare revision scenarios. And well, one was a nightmare revision scenario, one was I was off the mark. So it's kind of and you hearing some of your sentiments, I think that they'd really be interested in it. And I want to get back to writing stuff for them, and that's the only thing that I've gotten so far, except for the one that I talked to you about, how to survive as a working artist in jail. That is going to be a part of what to get for the man who's lost everything. and I want to have that written completely out in a way that we can release that article when we're promoting that book. And these are all long-term projects, but we're trying to light a fire under our own asses and light a fire under the ass of anybody watching this. As always, much love and infinite mojo to you and super profundo on the early eve of your day. Mike, thank you for coming on at the last minute,
No
and
worries,
thank you
buddy.
for being my very, very, very good Canadian friend.
No
One
worries.
of the loveliest men on earth, and I've been an eligible bachelor. Just look out, ladies. This man is on the prowl. I'm not sorry. I'm very happy. But this man, look at that. Oh, look at them cheeks.
Honest to
Just want
God,
to pinch
stop
him,
it.
kiss him. I will talk to you later,
Sending
Mike.
all the fucking e-whores
Thank
over
you
here.
again. Thank you again for coming on. And everybody watching and everybody not watching, much love to you. Take care and peace out. And the
Thanks, everyone.
broadcast.